Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to another edition of BrainScratch. And today we're going to be covering a story that I originally heard of on the old Alana G channel, Paranormal Lana. And I know a lot of you fans out there know about the channel. Unfortunately, she disappeared several months ago. Not literally disappeared from the planet, but she disappeared from social media. All of her social media disappeared, and that included the episodes that I'm going to be talking a little bit about in this case. But BrainScratch was somewhat inspired by the Paranormal Lana channel. I think we do things a little differently here. That was more of one of those creepy stories type channels, but there was something about the way that Alana presented the information. She used a usual speaking voice. She really did try to find good sources for her info, and that certainly helped inspire my format for BrainScratch. And Alana, if you get to see these videos, I hope you're well, and I know that you've got 50,000 plus people waiting for you to eventually return to YouTube, and I hope that can happen sometime soon. All that being said, one of my favorite cases that she covered was called The Watcher, and this takes place in New Jersey. Now, I've found a thread about this on Reddit, on their Unresolved Mysteries section, so we're going to start the investigation there. Shout out to Pranker Joker, who wrote this up and submitted it 4 months ago. Back in June 2014, a couple buys a house. Between June 5th, 2014 and July 18th, 2014, the owners receive 3 letters from an unidentified person. The person sends 3 creepy letters to the new owners telling them his grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, his father watched the house in the 1960s, now he's in charge of watching the house. Because of this, the new owners filed a lawsuit against the older owners because they, the older owners, did not disclose the fact there was a stalker. So I have confirmed that the lawsuits are happening at least via news sources. There are credible news sources reporting on this case. There's been big coverage, NBC, all types of media all over this case. We're going to get into some news stories a little bit later, but let's dive into what was in these letters a bit more. In the second and third letter, he states, "Have they found out what is in the walls yet? In time they will. I'm pleased to know your names now and the name of the young blood you have brought to me," one read. "Will the young bloods play in the basement? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in each bedroom. Then I can plan better." In one letter, he reportedly said that the home's windows and doors, quote, "allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house." Who am I? It read. I am the Watcher. The letters also stated, "Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them out to me." He then goes as far as saying that he had asked the prior owners to bring me young blood. Presumably in the first letter, he also states that he ran from room to room, imagining the life with the rich occupants there. "And now I watch and wait for the day when they, young blood, will be mine again." So, interestingly enough, this kind of sounds like a form of real-world trolling, but what's scary about this is the new family that was moving in there has children. So these references to the young blood, are very disturbing to the parents. And according to the information I've seen, they never wound up moving into that house because of receiving these letters. There's a couple theories that we could bounce around this. We'll get to those at the end. But let's continue with a timeline that was put together by Pranker Joker here. November 29th, 1990, past owners buy the house. Property records show a sale is made on the house. The couple that buys on this date will later sell the house to the people that'll sue them. May 24th, according to the lawsuit, the previous owners bought the house in 1990, did receive a letter from the Watcher. June 2nd, it says 2045, but I'm pretty sure that's 2014. New owners who paid $1.3 million for the 6-bedroom house closed the deal. June 5th, the new owners, according to their lawsuit, received their first letter from the Watcher. June 18th, the new owners, according to their lawsuit, receive a second letter. July 18th, the new owners receive the last of 3 letters. February 1st, 2015. In February 2015, the house was placed on the market for $1.49 million. Over the next few months, the price will drop at least twice, first to 1.35 and then down to 1.25. Am I the only one that finds it interesting that when they tried to relist the house, they actually increased the value there? Do you think they did any work on the house to improve it in that time, or were they just looking at the market and thinking, well, the market went up, we should try to... It's very odd to me. Now, of course, they might have been trying to make up for damages if they weren't able to move into that house and they had to pay to live somewhere else. That's not exactly a cheap proposition, but to the tune of $150,000, that seems just a little bit steep, but it's possible, I guess. So this is an article from NJ.com. I suppose they cover New Jersey, and they have pretty good coverage on this case. They've been kind of watching it in each of its steps, and this article is about the Watcher House's former owners rejecting claims someone is watching. What's interesting about them rejecting these claims is, if you actually read in the details, that might not necessarily be the case. Let's see here. Here we go. In their response, the previous owners admit receiving a single anonymous note in May of 2014, days before the closing, but they, quote, deny that the note was disturbing or in any way claimed a right of possession and/or ownership of the premises. If you look at the history of this case, you'll see that they've been adamant the whole time that they were not contacted by a person that was watching over the residence, but as you can see clearly here, they're now saying that yes, they at least received a note, but it just didn't seem to threaten or scare them. According to other details I've read, they destroyed the note, so we can't make that assumption for ourselves. We don't know what it said. It is kind of curious that the note came during the closing period for the house, and do we believe them in terms of them never receiving anything before that or not? I leave to you guys, but I could not find any hard information that they had received anything before this. Now, from what I understand, these letters did come through the mail system, so they've been able to at least trace the departing post office, I believe. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head right now. Outside of that, there is another twist in terms of some testing they did. Is the watcher a woman? Letters contain female DNA, report says. This is according to a report in the Westfield Leader. According to the report, sources close to the investigation say the 3 hand-printed letters were tested for DNA by the Union County Prosecutor's Office and contained female DNA. The report adds that the DNA did not match the female owner of the home. And I believe that's coming up because one of the potential theories is that the owners might have sent these letters themselves in an effort to get the home sale stopped or reversed for some reason. Now, I've bought a few houses in my time, and I don't believe it's that difficult to stop a home sale. What typically happens, though, is you might lose a deposit that you've put up for that. And I don't live in New Jersey, so maybe the laws are a bit different there, but for me personally, if they were trying to stop the home sale, I think there's different ways to do that. I don't know about writing spooky letters, but you know, maybe if you think it'll save you tens of thousands of dollars of a deposit you've put in, it might be certainly feasible. Here's the detail about where the letters came from. The report also says the letters were postmarked from Kearney and that the owners of the home went directly to the prosecutor's office instead of contacting Westfield Police. Is that a little strange? I certainly think so. I think that if you received letters that were threatening, you would probably at least notify the police of them, file some type of report right off the bat. So I don't know, maybe my assumption about the new owners not being involved, maybe it's a better theory than I initially thought. And this is from nydailynews.com. Spooky New Jersey house watcher analyzed by criminologists. It makes them feel powerful. They get a thrill from it. Of course, as usual, I'm going to have links in the description box below so you can dive into each of these articles and read all the details, but there's a particular quote I wanted to read here. This is from Joe Navarro, former FBI profiler. This guy has issues. Did he suffer from a loss of money? Come from a poor family? Once want to live there and couldn't? You don't want to ignore a theme that's repeated. And I think he raises an interesting point. Let's take a look at the history of the house and see if there is a theme that's repeating. They have this great feature on this article from NJ.com about the letters containing the female DNA. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, they actually have a timeline of the house. And we can see here the house was built in 1905. And I want you to keep it in mind what the watcher is saying. First, that yeah, it does feel like he has some ownership or entitlement to this house. Second, that it is multi-generational, that starting from the 1920s they were watching this house. So if we scoot the timeline forward here, we can see that in 1913, Mayor William H. Davies and his wife Florence buy the home for a sum of $1. Davies will serve one term as mayor beginning in 1932. At various points, he also serves as town Republican committee chairman, 3rd Ward councilman, and as director on the boards of 2 different banks. Now, I'm not sure who Pearsall is, the person they bought the house from, but why would you sell a house for $1? I don't think that was the fair market value back then. I do know that some real estate transactions happen like that, particularly if a family member is trying to transfer assets to another family member or even close friends. Sometimes if you want to hide the value of those assets, these things will happen. For example, if someone is getting a divorce and doesn't want his wife to take his car, he'll actually sell his car to his friend for $1, and his friend will keep the car until a year or 2 after the divorce agreement is all done. Then all of a sudden he can sell it back to his buddy for another $1. So this can be done usually in terms of playing funny money, hiding the true value of assets. Was that the case back here? I don't know for sure. I don't know the relationship between these two people, but let's continue. Lightning strikes. September 7th, 1932, at 2:30, lightning strikes the house during a major rainstorm. The bolts struck the chimney and the resulting debris damaged the roof as it fell. So it looks like this house has its own history. It's a little bit creepy in itself. Changing hands, in 1947, Davies, recently retired from his finance job at New York-based railroad company, sells the home to his son Ernest and daughter-in-law Frances for $1. Back to that $1 home sale. Apparently, like I said, this isn't so strange when it's being transferred between family members. So that the deed could be truly written over to the son. But let's continue. 1951, so only 4 years later, apparently Ernest and Frances left the house and sold it for $1 to Dillard and Mary Bird. Now, once again, I have no idea, are these family members? Are they cousins? Are they related? Are they friends? But this trend of this $1 sale keeps continuing. Let's continue with it. Seth Bakes and Floyd Lewis Bakes buy the home, again priced at $1 from the Schaffers. Oh, wait, that's weird because the Schaffers bought it from the Birds. So something must not be right about these dates here, because this doesn't make sense. The Birds have it in 1951. Then they sell it to the Schaffers, but supposedly that happens in 1955. However, in 1953, the Bakes buy it from the Schaffers. So I think they might have their dates confused there. But in essence, you get the important point. Once again, priced at $1, priced at $1. Let's move forward. Okay, so these are the past owners that sold it. It says that they buy it in November of 1990. And then we get to the items here of the letters showing up and the lawsuit kicking off June 2nd of 2015. So if you're thinking about this in terms of believing what the watcher is saying, is there something about the history of this house changing hands for $1 time and time again? Is it possible that he is a family member that got screwed when one of these transactions happened? For example, typically real estate goes up, especially over periods of time that long. Is it possible that he thought he was going to get a cut of the money when that house was sold, but someone sold that house to someone else for $1? Like if he was the son of a previous owner or something like that, and then the previous owner, for some reason, did not cash in on this house? I don't know. I do think it is somewhat strange that the intent and focus of the letters seems to be about ownership of this property. There's something about that. And the fact that this guy is calling himself the Watcher. That implies that he has some sense of entitlement or ownership to this in some way, at least from my perspective. So what else is going on in this case? This is from thegothamist.com. This is kind of a fun report. I highly recommend you check it out. It almost is written kind of like a story. It's not quite as much of a news report as a retelling of events of this investigator going to try to see if she can find information about the Watcher. At one point she interviews this man, Horace Corbin, who is, he works, I believe, for the Westfield Leader, the town's local paper, since 1890. And he has some interesting comments about this. This is him quoted. "When did the closing happen? When was the lawsuit filed, and when was all the work done?" he asked. He went on to ask rhetorically who the lender was and who owns the lending company. How can a couple with a $300,000 house in Scotch Plains and a $175,000 mortgage 10 years ago have a $1.1 million mortgage at a mortgage rate that doesn't make sense? You might ask those questions, he said, waving the cup. Or you might ask, maybe it's a ghoul in a house. But the issues are probably more practical. He pointed out that records show the new owners having had 12 mortgages in the past 10 years. 12 mortgages in the past 10 years? Something sounds extremely odd to me about that pattern. That's not to say that you would necessarily be buying a new house each time. You might be refinancing or putting a second or a third mortgage on your house to try to squeeze out some cash for some reason. But even considering that, that is a lot of transactions over a 10-year period. And once again, just gives me this sense of funny money play, that there's something going on with this couple and how they're using real estate transactions. If I thought the funny money play around the $1 thing was interesting, this really has my interest piqued, because now we're starting to put together something that might be a motive for them to have written those letters themselves. Corbin says that despite the lawsuit claiming that the new owners already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in renovations, neighbors deny that any contractors were ever seen at the house and that no permits were ever filed with the city. Nor, he said, has the house been put on the market. Moreover, upon receipt of these alleged letters, the new owners didn't even go to the police. Instead, they went directly to the Union County prosecutor, which we already know. Of course, you know, with an issue like this and a possible ghost story, Hollywood has to get involved, right? Well, according to Deadline.com, NBC buys The Watcher thriller drama from Alex Carey and Aaron Kaplan. That's right. In June, a local news story about a New Jersey family forced to abandon their new home over chilling letters from a stalker who calls himself The Watcher made national headlines. It has now become an inspiration for a thriller TV drama project from former Homeland executive producer Alex Carey, producer Aaron Kaplan, and Universal TV. Titled The Watcher, the project was bought preemptively by NBC. It marks the first sale under the overall deal Carey signed with Universal TV in May. Now, what I find interesting about this is you'll see how quickly it goes to fiction. Check this out. Written by Carey, The Watcher is a psychological thriller based on real events surrounding a young couple and their 2 children who move into their dream home in a small town. We could just stop right there. They didn't ever live in this house. So, inspired by the events, I would say is used extremely loosely. I think it would be a very short television show if it was truly about a person being harassed by 3 letters. So, that being said, yeah, it's interesting fare, and of course if you do go down the road of moving them into the house, you can have all these creepy events happen and really blow out the lore of the Watcher. Maybe take that backstory that I was looking at. If you consider the Watcher a reality, about, previous people that have some ownership of the house in some way. The house being struck by lightning. Who knows what kind of ghouls that would leave behind, right? Hey folks, it's Hollywood. All right, so before we close this episode out, we have one more twist. The Watcher home saga continues. Former owners seeking damages. So now there has been a countersuit filed. This news is just as of a few weeks ago, actually. The former owners are suing the new owners because of the damage to their names and reputation that is coming out from this. And I think that is a pretty valid lawsuit and has some good legs, maybe even more valid than their suit against them. When you consider that their suit stands on the fact that these previous owners were hiding information about the Watcher, and the previous owners have not confirmed anything except receiving one letter during the home sale, that's pretty intriguing. Also, I didn't mention it, but if you read some of the other news articles that are in the description box below, you will find information about other previous owners, people that were actually raised in this house that have never heard of the Watcher, say that their family never had any instance of receiving letters like that. So, I don't know. This is where we get to the theories. Theory number one, the Watcher is real. This is someone that for some reason has entitlement over this property, feels like his family might have been conned out of it at some point, is now looking to scare anyone that comes in there and or damage the value of it. One of the things I've seen theorized is it's hard to sell this house kind of like the Amityville horror house. I mean, but what I find interesting about that is you're comparing the Amityville horror house where we know certain types of things happened to a house that largely we can't verify that anything bad has really happened in this house, just that it's receiving these threatening letters. Theory number two, this is the homeowners themselves or a friend of theirs helping them with some type of scam to get out of purchasing that house. And now on top of that, it looks like they're going for damages that might be arising from this house. As I mentioned, they tried to sell it for more than they bought it for. They have a lawsuit pending against the previous owners. Is this some type of twisted money squeeze that is being fed by a ghost story? Very, very possible. And third, that might point to something else. Kind of like our good friend here, Horace Corbin, was mentioning. Who's responsible for selling this house? Who is the previous mortgage holder? Someone might feel burned if they bought this house, let's say, for $1 million. And during that financial transaction, they look at the history of the house and they see that the person selling it to them bought the house for only $1. That might be tough to swallow. And is there some potential benefit in terms of devaluing the house in a professional manner? I mean, maybe if you had a realtor or a loan company that was holding on to this asset, maybe they wanted to devalue it intentionally so that they could buy it up themselves in some way. There's definitely some potential for a third party to be involved here. However, my gut is saying that the story of it being someone truly watching that house, it's a little too literal for me. The threats are too literal. The Watcher talks about knowing the names of the young blood but doesn't mention their names. It just feels very faked, unfortunately. I think that's really the best way that I could put it. It feels very faked to me, so I really don't know how much stock to put in the letters that the Watcher has left behind. What do you guys think? Is this some type of real estate transaction scam? Is it real? Is this someone that might have been burned in the past and his family for generations and he's carrying on a tradition of harassing people that live in this house? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be sure to check them out. And thank you so much for joining me on this anniversary edition, 1 year strong, of BrainScratch. Take care, and I'll see you next time.